न शशांको न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम.
That supreme abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world.
15.7 ममैवांशो जीवलोके जीवभूतः सनातनः मनः षष्ठानीन्द्रियाणि प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति.
The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind.
15.8 शरीरं यद् अवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयति वायुर्गन्धान् इव शयात्.
The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another.
15.9 श्रोत्रं चक्षुस्पर्शनं च रसनं घ्राणमेव च अधिष्ठाय मनश्चायं विषयानुपसेवते.
The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects.
15.10 उत्क्रामन्तं स्थितं वापि भुञ्जानं वा गुणान्वितं विमूढा नानुपश्यन्ति पश्यन्ति ज्ञानचक्षुषः.
The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this.
15.11 यतन्तो योगिनश्चैनं पश्यन्त्यात्मानि अवस्थितं यतन्त्योऽप्याकृतात्मानो नैनं पश्यन्ति अचेतसः.
The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self realization can see all this clearly. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try.
15.12 यद् आदित्यगतं तेजो जगत् भाषयतेऽखिलं यच्चन्द्रमसि यच्चाग्नौ तत्तेजो विधिमामकम्.
The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me.
15.13 गामा विषय च भूतानि धारयाम्यहमोजसा पुष्णामि चौषधिः सर्वः सोमो भूत्वा रसात्मकः.
I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables.
15.14 अहं वैश्वानरो भूत्वा प्राणिनां देहमाश्रितः प्राणापानसमायुक्तः पचाम्यन्नं चतुर्विधम्.
I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of food stuff.
15.15 सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो मतः स्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदान्तकृत् वेद विदेव चाहम्.
I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas.
15.16 द्वाविमौ पुरुषौ लोके क्षरश्चाक्षर एव च क्षरः सर्वाणि भूतानि कुटस्थोऽक्षर उच्यते.
There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible.
15.17 उत्तमः पुरुषस्त्वन्यः परमात्मेतुदारतः यो लोकत्रयमाविश्य बिभर्त्यव्यय ईश्वरः.
Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them.
15.18 यस्मात् क्षरमतीतोऽहम् अक्षरादपि चोत्तमः अतोऽस्मि लोके वेदे च प्रथितः पुरुषोत्तमः.
Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as the Supreme Person.
15.19 यो माम् एवम् असम्मूढो जानाति पुरुषोत्तमं स सर्वविद् भजति मां सर्वभावेन भारत.
Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without doubting, is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata.
15.20 इति गुह्यतमं शास्त्रम् इदं मुक्तं मया नघ एतद् बुद्ध्वा बुद्धिमान् स्यात् कृतकृत्यश्च भारत.
This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection.
ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे पुरुषोत्तमयोगनाम पञ्चदशाध्यायः.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, that was amazing. Santosh Prabhu, your recitation was absolutely brilliant. Every word was pronounced perfectly and so fluently. Thank you so much. And Shubhada Mataji, your English also, the translation was read very confidently, very nice. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for this.
Santosh Prabhu, just one question. I was just curious. Were you reading Sanskrit or were you reading in English?
Actually, I was reading Sanskrit.
Yeah, no, I thought so because only when you read Sanskrit, your pronunciation comes out so good. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Hare Krishna. That's great.
Thank you for this service, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Okay, let's go to the verse today. So we'll continue reading chapter 15 because it's the Purushottam month. Purushottam Yoga, Yoga of the Supreme Person. The chapter summary so far, as we always do. So text 1 to 5, detachment from the world. We heard about the analogy of the banyan tree. We heard about, well, two verses talking about the analogy, then 3 and 4 talking about the duty of the human being. We need to detach ourselves and go back. And then 5 was the eligibility. 6 was the jalak. It was like the glimpse of the material of the spiritual world, which is not illumined by the sun or the moon. 7 was the identity of the soul, struggling in this world. 8 spoke about how the soul transmigrates, like the air carries aroma. 9 spoke about how one attains different kinds of ear, nose, and the senses grouped about the mind. 10 spoke about how certain people cannot understand this process of transmigration because their minds are not developed. 11 spoke about how the endeavoring transcendentalists can see all this very clearly, but one whose mind is not developed cannot see that. 12 spoke about how the splendor of the sun, splendor of the moon, the splendor of the fire comes from the Lord, he says. 13 spoke about how he enters into each one of the planets and by his energy they remain in orbit. He also says in the 13 that he becomes a moon and gives the juice of life to the vegetables. And now we'll come to today's. Sorry, I jumped the gun here. So 12 to 11, we spoke about transmigration. Sorry, I wasn't looking at the screen at all. So yes, so we've covered up to this section. We still got one more text tomorrow, which I guess Divyanam Prabhu will do. 15 today, we will do 14. But it is a wonderful chapter, this really. The one wants to just read it again and again and again. So today's verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 15:14. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashritaha Pranapana Samayuktaha Pachamyanam Chaturvidam. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest 4 kinds of foodstuff. So we'll go into the purports in a minute, but we'll just have a look at the Sanskrit. It's very straightforward mostly. Just the sandhi here, pranapana. This word here, pranapana. So there's a sandhi of 2. So it's prana and apana. These are 2 kinds of life airs. And again, we will discuss more about them later. But this sandhi becomes pranapana, pranapana. But it's prana and apana. And the other thing to remember always is that when it says pachami annam, but to keep within the meter, you need to join always the Y with the next word, that's why we actually, when you recite this verse, it goes pachami annam, rather than pachami annam. So yeah, that's, I think that's all in this verse. So purport, let me see on my screen who I can pick up. Okay, I've got Nitali Mataji. Will you be able to read this if you can unmute? I'm just picking at random.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Great, if you can read the purport, please.
Thank you. According to Ayurvedic Shastra, we understand that there is a fire in the stomach which digests all food sent there. When the fire is not blazing, there is no hunger. And when the fire is in order, we become hungry. Sometimes when the fire is not going nicely, treatment is required. In any case, this fire is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedic mantras, Vrat Aryanyaka Upanishad 5.9.1 also confirm that the Supreme Lord or Brahman is situated in the form of fire within the stomach and is digesting all kinds of foodstuff. I am Agnir Vaishnav Anaro Yo Yam Anta Purus Yanedam Anam Pachate. Therefore, since he is helping the digestion of all kinds of foodstuff, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. Unless the Supreme Lord helps him in digesting, there is no possibility of eating. He thus produces and digests foodstuff, and by his grace, we are enjoying life. In the Vedanta Sutra 1.2.27, this is also confirmed. Sabda dibhyo ta pratisthane cha. The Lord is situated within sound and within the body, within the air, and even within the stomach as the digestive force. There are 4 kinds of foodstuff. Some are drunk, some are chewed, some are licked up, and some are sucked. And he is the digestive force for all of them.
Thank you very much, Nitai Mataji. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We just do the Mangalacharan now. Om Ajnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishnam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Peshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Charu Swami Niti Namine. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Peshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So we'll look at the main points. So Prabhupada says, according to Ayurvedic Shastra, we understand that there is a fire in the stomach which digests all the food sent there. So you can see we were discussing how, in the 12th text, we were discussing that how fire, without fire we can't survive. So fire helps us to cook food. And then fire also helps us to digest the food. This is what is explained in this verse. Prabhupada continues to say, sometimes when the fire is not going nicely, treatment is required. In any case, the fire is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So within our body, the fire within the body is got like, it can be in 4 different states, 4 varieties. It is explained again in Ayurveda that sometimes when the fire in the belly, Agni, is in balanced situation, whereas everything is working properly, then it's called Sama Agni. Here the words are separately Sama Agni, but normally it's pronounced Samagni. So that is when your fire in the belly is working properly, whatever you eat is digested, you have no issues with acidity or gas or whatever, everything is digested properly. And then when we are young, you can see that most of the time young people have this situation. They can eat and digest whatever. But then as you get older, your system gets a little bit older, like an old car. And then you start getting these issues with the stomach because things are getting a little bit out of balance. So then it's explained that when the Agni is irregular, it's called Vishamagni. Vishamagni, and that is the word for irregular metabolism. So that time is erratic, sometimes good, sometimes not good, always giving you trouble. And Tikshanagni. Tikshanagni is when it's hypermetabolism. So it's too hot, too sharp, and that again gives you various kinds of problems. And then Mandagni, that happens in the old age, Mandagni. There's hypometabolism, where it's just too slow, too dull, you don't have appetite, whatever you're eating is just sitting, it's just feeling, you feel bloated all the time. So these are the 4 kinds of, 3 kinds of disorders. One is a perfection, 3 kinds of disorders that we have with our stomach. And these are all to do with this Agni. And when you go to the Ayurvedic doctor, he will check it out. He will know by checking your pearls, etc., what the situation is, and he can then start treating these various conditions. So when we eat food, again in Ayurveda, when you meet anybody, they will tell you that you mustn't drink water, especially cold water, with food, because this is it. We got the Agni, so Agni is trying to do his job, and if we put cold water together with the food, then we're dousing the Agni. So that's why it's not recommended. It is they normally say either 40-45 minutes before and 40-45 minutes after. Otherwise, we shouldn't be drinking cold water or any cold drink for that matter with food if you want our stomach to work perfectly. So this is explaining about the Agni. So Prabhupada then points out, this is not just from the Gita, but this information is confirmed in very important Upanishad. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad talks about it. Prabhupada quotes this verse from there. Ayam Agnir Vaishvanaro Yo Yam Antapurushe Yanedam Annam Achyate. And the translation of that is, God is a fire inside the stomach that enables living beings to digest food. So it's coming from, it's not just that, sometimes people say, oh, ISKCON is translating verses just to suit certain, no, but these are translated not just at the whim, but this information about the Agni comes from important scriptures. Again, then he quotes about Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta Sutra, you can see this is the aphorism, very, very short. Shabda dibhyo nta pratisthanacha. See, Vedanta Sutra is called Sutra. Sutra means aphorism. So whole Vedanta Sutra is written like this. So it's a very short, aphorism. And then the acharyas can look at this, because actually what it says here is Sabda Adi, to Sabda Adi Bhyo. So Sabda Adi means Shabda, etc., which means sound, etc. Anta means entering. But this Sthanach, so and then remains there, gets to that particular destination, Sthana, Cha, and. So just from these 4 words, you can see the English is so long, right? The Lord is situated within sound, within the body, within the air, and even within the stomach as a digestive force. But the Vedanta Sutra, Vyasadeva summarized the whole of the Vedas in the Vedanta Sutra. And this is why it was all very, very short, and only very, very exalted acharyas can decipher this. We won't be able to make head or tails of this. But then, fortunately for us, Vyasadeva after that also then wrote the Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam is actually a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So we don't have to worry about this. So all these sutras are explained in detail in Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada continues in the purport, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. Unless the Supreme Lord helps him in digesting, there is no possibility of eating. So just think about it. When we eat food, we can perceive the food in terms of the taste, its texture, everything in our mouth, even in the back of our throat, perhaps, the nice taste. But then as soon as it passes down, that's it. We have no perception of where it's gone. Of course, it's gone in the stomach, but then we don't know what's going on in there. Everything is working completely automatically. Food gets in there. So the scientists will explain that, oh yeah, but when the food gets in there, certain enzymes are released, certain juices are released, and then they break up the food, and then the villi in the small intestines pick up the nourishment, and then it takes it to the various parts of the body, becomes blood. So they have their scientific explanation like this. But then the Vedas explain here that actually the whole process is working because of the fire in the body. Otherwise, even these juices and things will not be released. So this is the point they miss. So we are not independent in the eating process. So the point here is that if Krishna wasn't helping us to digest the food, we would not be able to eat. Such amazing, such a basic thing that we take it for granted. We never even think about it. We eat and just that's it. Next day, everything is sorted. Your body has got nourishment. The waste is chucked out. If this is happening like an amazing, extremely complex factory within our stomach. But we say it's happening automatically. We don't give credit where it's due. Then he says, I join with the air of life. So the air of life is called Vayu or Vata. So you must have heard this term, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. They normally talk about these things. So there are 5 types of air. And anybody guess, anybody know what the 5 types are? Two of them are mentioned in this verse.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuta Mataji, yes?
Is it Apan Vayu, Saman Vayu?
Yes, yes. That you got two anymore?
Pranavayu.
Pranavayu.
Three.
Pranavayu.
Three.
And
we got
Done.
Vaish, Prana, Apana, and Vaishvana. Is the Vaishvana? No.
That's the fire.
It's the process. It's the process. Yeah, it's the
Fire.
process.
Udana and Samana.
That's it. Very good. Excellent, Santosh Prabhu. We've got a wonderful scholar here with us. So Pranavata, that Pranavata controls the sensory perception. These air are balancing our whole system, right? Actually, there are many more, but these are the 5 principal airs, right? So Pranavata, it controls the sensory perception, inhalation, heartbeat, ingestion of our food, coughing, spitting, all that is controlled by the Pranavata. Very, very scientifically explained. I'm just giving you a summary here, but if you look at it in detail, it's explained very nicely in the Shastras. Then Udanavata. Udanavata, it energizes the mind and awakens energy. And it also has to do with the lungs and the respiratory system, speech and breathing, especially exhaling. See, speech, when you speak, we are actually breathing out generally. So that is all controlled by this Udanavata, right? Then Vyana. Vyanavata, it circulates all the blood through the body. So all circulation is happening because of the Vyanavata. When people have a circulatory problem, we say, oh, my circulation is not good, then the Western medicines, of course, they will try and treat you with some allopathy medicine or whatever. But in Ayurveda, they will try and treat this particular weakness in the Vyanavata. And that's why they are more successful long term. So it controls emotions as well, nerve impulses, sensory motors, the muscular contractions and relaxations. Then you got Apana Vata. Apana Vata controls the entire pelvic region, pelvic cavity region. The reproductive organs are controlled by that. Uterus control, urinary tract is controlled, the bladder is controlled through that. Our large intestines are also controlled by those. So that's Apana. Then it's Samana. Samana controls the stomach, the small intestines, small and large intestines, the liver, pancreas, and the digestive organs. It represents Agni. So see, this Samana Vata represents Vaishvanara, the Agni. That's where it rests. So everything is so beautifully, so scientifically explained and arranged, which the scientists, of course, don't believe. This reminds me of a time when I was giving a class at the manor. And at that time I was speaking about how this universe is so perfectly balanced and everything works so beautifully, everything is synchronized. All those huge planets are first of all floating in the air, and then they're not even crashing into each other. And they are orbiting perfectly, everything happens, the sun rises exactly at the same time that we expect it to, it sets at the same time. So all this perfection, how does it come? And I was saying people, scientists, they say, oh, there's a Big Bang and everything happened from the Big Bang. So I was saying to the audience in the temple room, I was saying that, how does it make sense? How can there be a Big Bang? If there's an explosion here in this room, there will be chaos. There'll be broken glass, there'll be everything all over the place, all my books will be on the floor and burning. So there'll be chaos. So when there is a Big Bang, how can you explain that from the Big Bang came such wonderful order, right? And then this little boy, about 10, 12 years old boy, he raises his hand. And so I was surprised. I said, do you have a question? He says, no. He says to me, I can give you an example where there is going to be a perfect pattern, he said, perfect pattern when the Big Bang happens. So I was confused. I said, where? So he said, when the firework goes in the air, and when it goes bang, there's an explosion, and there's perfect patterns there on the sky. So I thought it was very clever. I thought, wow, he's got me. How do I answer this? But luckily, I was able to think on my feet and say that, okay, yes, that's true. That was a Big Bang, and then the beautiful patterns come out in the sky. But then you have to think about, how does it happen? there was a very clever pyrotechnician who assembled that firework in such a way that when it then ignites and when it explodes, those patterns come out. Do you agree? He said yes. So I said, then you must agree that also the way everything is going perfectly in sync is because there's a clever designer behind it. It cannot happen without it. Yesterday, Madhu Mataji was giving the example about Professor, who was it? Who had that model? I forgot the name. Newton. Exactly. I was like Newton. And the same analogy, right? How foolish is it to believe that everything is happening automatically? No. There's no person behind it. It just came together, right? Doesn't make sense. Same way here, if you speak with a doctor, for example, I don't know if there's any doctors online here. If a doctor would say, no, all this is rubbish, these juices are released and that's how your food gets digested. There's no fire in your belly or whatever, right? So the point is, of course, we have no way to prove all these things, but we have Shastra. We have the Shastra Gyan, and we take Shastra seriously, and we understand things from Shastra, right? But even if we say, okay, fine, we believe your theory that the juices are coming out and everything, but then how is it all organized? How is it happening so perfectly that they're coming out just at the right time, in the right quantity, and helping the food? So again, there is a designer. There is an invisible force, the Supreme Lord, who's making all this happen. So all these things, when we learn these kind of verses, this solidifies our faith in the Lord, and we know that we are completely dependent on the Lord, even in terms of, forget about living, breathing, and all that. Even just simple things like eating and digesting, we are dependent on the Lord. So it's such an important thing to remember. So then Krishna speaks about 4 kinds of food stuff. So anybody can name them? These are easy. Food that is
juicy, liquid, juicy.
Yeah, so no, but in terms of the action. So we're chewing, then we are
Carrot.
drinking.
Licking.
Okay, by the way, yeah, so chewed in Sanskrit it's called charya. Charya. Then food is sip. You sip of drinking, right? That is called here.
Sucked. Sucking.
Yeah, and then we got licked.
Leaking.
I'm licking.
So here in this picture we see a little girl licking this lollipop. Right before that she's eating the carrot, and then she's drinking orange juice, and now
Sucking.
So licking is leya, and then now she's sucking the lollipop, the ice cream, or so lolly. That is called chusya. Chusya is the one that we can relate with. We speak in Gujarati as well, in Hindi, I think same words. So these are the 4 different foods. So any food, anything that we put in our mouth is within these categories, right? So the Lord says that I join with the life airs to digest these kind of foods. These 4 kind of foods are mentioned in a daily prayer that we do at the temple. Anybody know about that?
Chaturveda Sri Bhagavad Prasad.
Mangala.
Yes, very nice. Yes, thank you so much. So that is the Gurvashtakam that we sing at 4:30 in the morning. We call it Mangala Arti as well. I'm just trying to think of the. How does the tune go? Anybody remind me? Chaturveda.
Sri Bhagavad Prasad.
Prasada.
I'm trying to think of that actually.
Chaturveda Shri Bhagavad Prasad.
Chaturveda Shri Bhagavad Prasada.
Chaturveda Bhagavad
Prasada. Manakrita Hari Bhakta Sangha.
I got it. Chaturveda Shri Bhagavad Prasada. Swadana Tritan Hari Bhakta Sangha. Bhajata Sadaiva. Vande Guru Shri Charana Vrindam. So, the spiritual master, because this prayer, don't forget, is glorifying the spiritual master. Here it says the spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzed as that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Then food is also, as we know, divided into the modes. Everything in the world is divided into the modes. So food is also divided into modes. So there's mode of goodness, mode of passion, the mode of ignorance. The food is divided like that. So anybody know which chapter this is covered in Bhagavad Gita?
Chapter 14.
Close, not close enough.
13.
That's getting further away.
16.
Quite close, very close.
Oh, 17. 17, sorry.
17:8 talks about the mode of goodness. So food's dear to those in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life, purify one's existence, and give strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. Such foods are juicy, fatty, wholesome, and pleasing to the heart. Only thing I would argue about is fatty. I wouldn't want any food to be fatty. But the point being that food in this category are good for you. Good for your body, good for your consciousness, good for your heart and brain. So any examples anybody can give me food in this category?
Ghee. Ghee?
Yes.
Ghee.
Ghee, yes, ghee. Ghee, fruits.
Milk.
Milk, exactly. Fruits, ghee, milk.
Fruits.
Milk,
Fresh
vegetables.
vegetables. Yeah. All these nice things.
Fruits.
All the healthy stuff. Right?
Wheat flour.
With flour
Nuts and butter.
and butter as well. Yes. Flour as well. Yes.
Vegetables. Vegetables.
Yogurt.
Prabhuji, khichdi.
Yogurt.
What about lentils?
Yes.
Lentils, khichdi.
The lentil and rice, they go into khichdi. Yeah.
Passion and ignorance. Por ejemplo, ignorance quiere grupo, Jesse, por ejemplo. Que
Fruit and nuts.
Fruit and nuts, exactly. So all these lovely, nice things that we can offer to the Lord.
The one
And then
sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic.
Yeah.
Esto en inglés se traduce goodness, passion, and ignorance. Sattvic food, yo no pongo ajo y eso nacho, taste zuban ke. No one que
There's Raksha Mataji is translating in Bengali, is it? Okay, so yes, foods in my mode of passion are foods which are too bitter, too sour, salty, hot, pungent, dry, and burning. They are dear to those in the mode of passion. Such foods cause distress, misery, and disease. So see, food like this, when it's too hot, too sour, too pungent. I like my food actually spicy, so I'm at fault here. That's not really good for your system, right? You get indigestion, you get burning of the heartburn, etc., etc. These are mode of passion. So when it comes to food, I'm very much in the mode of passion. So yeah, there's the examples are just all the spicy food, etc., etc. Right? Then food in the mode of ignorance. Foods that's prepared more than 3 hours before being eaten. Food that is tasteless, decomposed, and putrid. And food consisting of remnants and untouchable things is dear to those in the mode of darkness. So untouchable things, so obviously non-veg stuff, remnants, things that are left over and lying there somewhere in a plate for hours. See, interestingly, actually, here Krishna is saying that food that's prepared more than 3 hours before is more in a mode of passion. So unfortunately, a mode of ignorance rather. So you can see many times we eat food which is actually left over from last night, and we sometimes intentionally cook. I know my nephew, when he was in university, he would just cook for the whole week and just leave it in the fridge and eat it every day. So, but thing is, when you know the reality that all that food is really not good for you, food should be always fresh as you can make it. Obviously, we got a different lifestyle now in terms of working and all that, so we have some excuse. But as much as possible, we should keep eating fresh food.
Hare Krishna, Mukunda, Hari Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Our prepared food are offered to Krishna. So they're prasad. So
That's true. That's the, yes, very good point, Palika Mataji. Yes. So when it's prasad, and then this timeline doesn't matter. Prasad does not physically, maybe it sometimes you look like it's gone off, but prasad doesn't go off.
no.
Yeah.
That's why once I remember one Maharaj, he came that we prepare so many, in the bakery, what they sell, samosa and kachuri, because they are offered first. Then because it's offered, so it's prasad. So that doesn't have the
Very
bad
good
effect.
point.
That's what he was mentioning.
Excellent point. Yes. So yes, but obviously these verses are speaking to the non-devotees generally. So we need to that's what we point out. But good point. Thank you. Then the Krishna's. So I'm going to summarize here. Wonderful arrangement Krishna's made for us. So now there are these 3 verses that we've just done, and the one tomorrow also. But let's try and revise these 3. So can anybody tell me what was in text 12? We're talking about how this is Krishna's arrangements. These are the 3 verses that he really beautifully explains. Text 12 talks about the splendor of the sun and the moon and the fire. Text 13 speaks about how he enters into the planets and keeps them in orbit, and he becomes the moon, supplies the juice of life to vegetables. And this current verse today is a fire of digestion in all the bodies and helps with digestion. So just looking at these 3 things, you can see how amazingly the Lord is supporting us from the outside and from within. And not just us, but he's supporting the all of the universes, not just this universe. Right? So the Lord Lord supports every aspect of life with his energy, he makes the earth habitable, nourishes all vegetation, and even ignites the gastric fire to digest our food. I picked this up from a lecture I was listening to. Our enjoyment and our very existence depends on something beyond this matter. And that invisible transcendental power is Krishna. This is what we need to understand. If we can understand this, we are making progress. This is why we earlier, and I think when we were doing the text 12, it was saying in the purport that this is the beginning of one's Krishna consciousness. One has to strive and see all these things. When we get perfect, when we actually come to the stage of prema, we will be communicating with the Lord directly. But until we get there, we need to see him through these aspects. We need to see him and appreciate him and thank him. So one other aspect from the whole thing, all these things, all these wonderful things Krishna is doing, yet he's totally renounced. Renunciation is one of his 6 qualities, as we know. The Lord, anybody who claims to be Bhagavan, he must have 6 qualities in fullness. So anybody know these 6?
Wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation.
Perfect, exactly. So here, people you can easily understand beauty, strength, fame, and wealth, and knowledge. But renunciation, sometimes people get confused. What does it mean about it? But here, this is the example of renunciation. That the Lord is looking after all the universes in a macro way and a micro way, right? But he is absolutely detached from the whole thing. He's made the arrangements and he is completely remaining aloof from that. He renounced, completely renounced. He doesn't want, of course, we should thank the Lord, but the Lord is not expecting us to thank him. This is how renounced he is. If we have made some arrangement, we'll be bragging about it to 100 people. I did this, I made this arrangement, and this is because of me, all these people are doing. I was running a company before I retired, and I always used to think, okay, these 15 people working, they're all working because of me. But Krishna is not like that. He is so renounced, completely renounced. Not just that, he keeps supplying the necessities to everyone, regardless of their devotees, non-devotees, atheists, theists. They are there, whether they are favorable, unfavorable, whether they are praising him or deriding him does not matter. He keeps supplying them the necessities without asking anything. Now, someone may argue that no, actually, we read that Durga, she's the superintendent of the material world, so she is the one who is arranging it. It's not Krishna. Durga is in charge of the material world, and she is the one who is arranging all this. So what would you say to that?
Mayadhekshana prakriti suyate sacharacharam.
Very good. Very good. Krishna says in the ninth chapter, text 10, that this material energy is one of my energies and is working under my direction, creating all the moving and non-moving living entities. And under its rule, the whole manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. But then in Brahma Samhita also, Lord Brahma clarifies the situation of Durga. Shrishti sthiti pralaya sadhana shakti reka chaye vayasya bhuvanani bhibarti Durga ichhanurupam apyasya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Lord Brahma says, the external potency Maya, who is of the nature of the shadow of the Chit potency, is worshipped by all as Durga, the creating, preserving, and destroying agency of this mundane world. So you see, creating, preserving. So yes, Durga is doing all this. But what does it say? I adore the primeval Lord Govinda in accordance with whose will Durga conducts herself. So Durga, Mother Durga, is actually also not independent. She is working under the direction of Krishna. This is very nicely explained in this Brahma Samhita verse. So yeah, devotees, this is the information that we should be all armed with when we are either preaching or when we are speaking with friends and somebody starts to sort of put counterpoints there. Then these are the things we should be armed with, and then we can actually try and spread Krishna consciousness this way. So I will stop here. It's 8:37, and we can now again open for any discussion, any comments, any realizations.
Hare Krishna. Kudari Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Santosh Prabhu.
I was when you were talking about the renunciation of the Lord, I was just thinking, would you also say that through his pastimes as well, he's shown how renunciated he is? Like he was in Vrindavan, but then he left, went to Mathura, although he thought about the gopis. Same for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as well. He became a sannyasi. For the other avatars as well, I think there could be
nice examples, very nice examples. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he left a very young, beautiful life. One young, beautiful wife, and an aging mother behind. There was nobody else to look after, but he was renounced. He was completely, obviously, he's a supreme personality of Godhead, but he knew how to act. So yes, very good example. And Krishna also. Krishna left Vrindavan, left the gopis. He loved to remain there, but he did that. So yes, the Lord himself is showing us by example. Our acharyas also are prime examples. I always think about my Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Bhakti Charu Maharaj, at a fairly young age, he left his family, never got married, but he was able to give up his family, he was brought up in a well-to-do family, but he was able to give up all that and go and live in the temple. In temples in those days, I suppose even now, fairly austere. If you live in the ashram at the manor, it's not 5-star, right? So in the early days, of course, it was much worse. So he had to sleep on the floor or whatever. He did that. He was able to give his comfortable family life up for this wonderful higher purpose. This is the renunciation.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for bringing that up.
Also, Giriraj Maharaj.
Yes, Giriraj Maharaj actually was the son of a millionaire.
Yeah, and he gave
right?
up.
And he gave up everything. Now, this is amazing. Think about it, right? Giriraj Maharaj gave up everything and he came to the West. One time his father, I'll just tell you a small story about Giriraj Maharaj. I think you will probably, all the devotees will know. His father was trying very hard to get him back. So he offered him $1 million. You come back, I'll give you $1 million. He refused. Then he came to India to try and persuade him. I think his father met Prabhupada as well to try and say, you please send my son back and everything. But Giriraj Maharaj completely refused. And I was just trying to think of something that came to mind. Oh, yes. So his father, Giriraj Maharaj, then said, okay, fine, I will, because he was convinced that he was brainwashed. He was completely convinced that his son was brainwashed. So he says, fine, okay, do one last thing for me. Go and see this psychologist, this doctor or somebody that I've arranged for you. And if you see him afterwards, if you still want to remain, then I'll leave you alone. So apparently he says, fine, okay, I'll agree. So he went to this doctor, and then the doctor was trying to see if he was brainwashed. But whatever he was saying, the Giriraj Maharaj would give him answers using Bhagavad Gita slokas. He said something this, and he would answer with a sloka, and really prove to him that whatever he was saying was wrong, and Bhagavad Gita had the right answer. So this went on for half an hour. Then the doctor came out, and he told his father, if I remain with your son too long, I will become a Hare Krishna. So you better take him away from here. So this is Giriraj Maharaj. He was not at all interested to go back. But thank you for bringing that up, Krishnavani Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mukunda, Hare Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I was just looking back, now you mentioned about Maharaj and how austere staying in the temple, but if I remember my childhood also, I wasn't coming from a very rich family or something, but our giving away was much, much more, done. Like I used to see my parents, we used to have students coming and staying in our houses. They didn't pay anything. They were just staying because they had some financial difficulties, so they couldn't give. So they used to stay in our house. My mother used to provide them staying and food, but they used to do some kind of teaching other children. They used to get the the fees for the college, university, but they were staying as our brothers. We accepted them as a brother. So that way our renunciation was much more than what it is now. I see my parents. So many people used to stay in our house, not paying anything, but they used to treat them as their children. So it was so much. And nowadays, the selfishness as the Kali Yuga is approaching. People are getting more selfish. They want their own thing. That's how. Now listening to Bhagavad Gita, it really opened your eye. How spiritual. Because I used to see my parents how pious they were, and how much they used to live on the basis of religion, real religion. But nowadays this is all going. So so it's a very nice thing to get back to the Bhagavad Gita and see how it was a swastik, like you mentioned about Maharaj. See that this is how the austerity can help us to approach Krishna.
Yes, thank you so much, Valika Mataji, for sharing that. Yes, and the thing is, yes, in the olden days, I think our generation, a couple of generations before us, people were very generous. Now I think the lifestyle has become very selfish. So that's true. On the messages I've got a message from Puja Mataji. She's actually just reminding me that there's an error on one of my slides. Instead of the 15th chapter, I'm actually I've got 12th chapter there. So thank you for correcting me. I will actually make that correction. I think what I did was copy pasted from the 12th chapter somehow. No, I think we haven't done the 12th chapter. I don't know why 12 came there. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. Anybody else?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu, just adding to Palika Mataji's comment, that actually it's a Indian culture. And at our time, yes, everywhere in all the states in India, we are very, very, like what you call accommodative. Matter what come, and because now we are influenced with the Western, living style and everything. Otherwise, in one room, at night, 5, 6 people will sleep.
Yes.
And whoever comes, guest, you just accommodate, and so.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But the thing is, in those days, yes, the children were brought up to be completely accommodating, right? Here, I know. I'll give you my own example. My son, when he was younger, but if we had a guest and we would say to him that, listen, the guest is here, so we need you to move and sleep on the couch or something like that because we need the guest to. He would be really upset. He would want to give up his room. So because this is again, this is the mentality that people are brought up with. They seem to think, oh, I own this room, and it's my room, and how can I give it to somebody? So this somehow it's just children are brought up like this. Yes, you're right. We're not accommodating at all. But you're saying that in India, yes. But I'm guessing that even in India, this culture is there now. I'm sure that it's changing. I can't imagine India is still the same.
Yeah,
Perhaps maybe in the villages. In the
yeah.
villages, maybe, but in the cities, it's like here. It may be worse than here.
Yeah, probably everyone's trying to ape the West in India, even trying to be better than the Western people. So yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, this is it. Unfortunately, what they don't appreciate is our Sanskriti. They're completely ignoring that and just taking on the Western bad habits. But there you go.
This is Kali Yuga, Prabhuji. It's Kali Yuga now.
In India, it was joint family, Prabhuji. Before joint family, everybody used to live like the extended family used to live in one house.
Yes.
And yeah, whatever number of rooms there used to be, so many living in one house. And obviously now it has become nuclear families. So it's all.
Exactly, it's all changing. But even today, just last couple of months ago, there was a friend of mine who came from which city is it? I think it's Chennai. Yeah, I came from Chennai, and this is a rich family. They are a very famous business house in India in some terms of not like the really big ones, but they're a famous brand. Butterfly. If you're a Butterfly brand, they make pressure cookers and stuff like that. I think you can still buy them even in this country. So this is a friend of mine, and when he came to our house for Purušottama. This is before lockdown, actually. It must be more than 2-3 months ago. So he was, when he was saying in the middle of the Purušottama, suddenly he just went, he says, this is strange. I said, what is strange? He says, it's so quiet here, right? Because of course they're used to all the noises, everything, right? And it's just so quiet here. And he says, 2 of you live in this house. My son was out that day. And he says, and there's hardly any sound anywhere. He says, I find it's really eerie, he says. He says, first of all, there's a lot of noise where we live. And he says, they live in a house, in a big house, and there are 54 members together, joint family still, 54 members living together. So they have, of course, because they're very rich, they have, obviously, each unit has their own space, but then they all have prasadam together in a hall. It is so nice, The children all play together and everything, So this is something which is very rare nowadays. Okay. So very beautiful section of the Bhagavatam. This. So tomorrow will be the beautiful verse that Divanam Babu will do. 15:15. Sarvasya. Everybody knows that verse, and it's such a nice verse. So that will conclude this section about maintenance of body, mind, and soul, etc. And so thank you so much for giving me a chance to speak and purify my Vani. Thank you for being at the class, and once again, please take care. Pray for everybody. Pray for everybody to remain safe. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for a lovely class.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, devotees.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna to everybody.
Hare Krishna to everybody.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Hare Bol.